Hey, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. I'm Dr. Ariel Hammond, and this is the Enrichment Entrepreneur, a podcast for current and aspiring entrepreneurs who are in the business of helping kids thrive. We're talking after-school programs, summer camps, tutoring, enrichment, the people and places that show up for kids outside the classroom. I'm still building right alongside you, and that's exactly why we're here, to learn, grow, and figure this out together.
Let's go!
Hello, and welcome back to the Enrichment Entrepreneur. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing DR, or better known as Professor DR Schreiber. He is going to talk to us about all things magic and bringing the magic of magic to children in our community. So to start, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your story and how you got into your business?
And my name is Professor DR Schreiber. I perform under the name of Historical Conjurer. That's kind of my motto there, my group. But I typically do old-fashioned 18th century magic. That's my performance style. It's been about 20 years ago when my oldest son was in school. The school put a call out for folks to teach after school enrichment. So that's when I kind of stepped in and started doing magic. Before that, my wife's a school teacher, my mom's a school teacher, and I would go into their classrooms and teach a few magic tricks to the kids every once in a while. So I had experience with kids for a number of years. I tended to become the reward for when they had good behavior for some reason, that they brought the magician in to teach them magic tricks. So that was my background. And so I've been teaching professionally in the area for at least 15 years now. My son's now in college. So it's been a little bit of a while that I've been doing this, and full-time in the last 5 years, full-time in all the schools. That's my background.
Okay, awesome. So you are a lot of different roles. You are a magic historian, a performer, a teacher, and you're running enrichment programs in local elementary schools in the Portland area.
Yes.
Most people pick one of those things. You've built something that somehow lives in all of those areas at once. And
Wouldn't that be
how does
easier?
that? Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? So how do all of these things work together? What is your schedule? What does your week look like?
Depends on the week. And the interesting thing about being a professional performer is that some of the performances come in waves. There may be a week where I have 3-4 shows in a week, and then others where I don't have anything. Plus, for performance, most of my shows tend to be on the weekends. They're usually Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays by far. So it works out well for a teaching schedule because I teach during the week and not on the weekend. But every once in a while, in the next 2 weeks, I've got some conflicts with my teaching schedule. I have to have some flexibility with the parents, and sometimes I have to change schedules. Obviously, we schedule things, and when I book it, I give them all the dates. But every once in a while, I have to say, I'm sorry, I got a gig out of town I have to be at, or I need to be prepared for. For the most part, parents are very flexible and they completely understand as long as I give them enough warning, try to give them a week or two warning that, hey, next Thursday, I'm going to have to cancel class or whatever. And it's not, I don't cancel, I just postpone it, bump everything forward a week, which usually works out. Every once in a while when we're getting toward the end of this, especially this time of year, we're getting toward the end of the school year, we'll have to do a double session where we end up doing 2 hours, which is, I prefer not to do that, but only because it's a lot of information to throw at the kids to make them focus for 2 hours. But they usually get something special and they'll bring us an extra special snack or something. They'll all end up with lollipops or dum-dums or whatever. That's kind of what I have to do. If it is a little difficult to juggle that kind of stuff in between. But as long as I'm not, most difficult is when I have to do out of town shows where I have to travel, because then it's really hard, because I got to prep for that too. But no, it makes my life interesting. That's for sure. I'm constantly looking at the calendar. I live off the calendar because I just don't know what's going on from week to week, from day to day.
Same. I used to keep a hard copy calendar until I started this business, and now everything lives in an electronic calendar. So you have such an incredible background. You have a background as a television producer, a Disneyland cast member, and a magic historian. How did all of that lead you to teaching kids and after-school programs?
Well, I mean, obviously, my time at Disneyland, I have no problem working around kids. I enjoy being around the younger folks. As I mentioned, both my parents were in education. My wife is in education. So kind of used to that idea of building curriculum and taking time to teach, because I think I was taught so well too. So I understand how to teach. I've also found for me, I actually do really well learning myself when I'm teaching. It helps
Yeah.
me better explain things and understand it better myself. Because sometimes, especially in magic, I just go, I just got to do this. And you don't realize what are you doing with your hand? What exactly is that movement until you have to explain it to somebody else. And so I also teach, by the way, for adults too. It's not just kids. I do adult classes as well. And so usually those tend to be one-on-one, not group sessions. But I've also done lectures at big conferences on magic history, and other things like that. So I've just kind of always kind of been in that area. During lockdown, when we were in COVID, I had a lot of demand because I think people wanted at home education. So I spent a lot of time, unfortunately, on Zoom and on a different platform teaching. So that really led it more into a higher demand operation. There's a national magic organization called the Society of Young Magicians, which its goal is to help teach magic to young kids. I was a mentor with that group for about 10 years. And so that really helped for me to build not necessarily a curriculum, but a method for teaching the kids. I used what their philosophy was on the teaching side, which I still use to this day. It's not as anything revolutionary. It was just kind of the ideas that they like to use, which was teaching one trick a day, structuring it into a way where it's a little bit of a lecture, a little bit of a class, and then a little bit of performance. That was their basic model. And that's kind of the basic model I still use to this day. Hopefully it's not copyright or anything. I'm not going to get sued, but I don't think so because it's nothing that they invented. It's just what they used. And so that's kind of the method that I use as well. The tricks that I teach, the way that I teach the magic, is I really try to go off of what the kids like. I want to build off of what they know and what they like. Sometimes you just you got to figure out what their area of interest is. And that takes a little bit of practice for me. So that's kind of how all those melded together into one.
All right. So my next question, what do you love most about working with kids specifically? Because throughout your career, you mentioned you've worked with young magicians, you've worked with adults and teaching them lessons one-on-one, and you also work with kids in groups. What do you love about working with kids, and what does a kid experience in your program that can't be replicated anywhere else?
I love the quotes. I get it every once in a while from kids saying, "This is the best enrichment I've ever had. This is the best class I've ever had." This isn't really fair because we're not really doing class. We get to do magic and we get to perform and we get to watch magic. So that's right there fun because you're not sitting down to learn math or something. I'm not
Yeah.
dishing math. Some of the kids love math too. But there's definitely some fun because they get to see a show. Every single
Yeah.
week they get to watch a show, they get to participate in the show, then they get to perform in their own show. So the whole purpose of the class is, as I talk about all the time with the kids, with my students, is that we're entertainers first. That's what our job is. Our job is to entertain people. And so it means that class needs to be entertaining and class can be fun. And that's what they're kind of having fun with. So I think that's what I also get out of it too, because it's fun for me. Because if I'm not having fun teaching them, if I'm not having fun performing for them, then I'm not doing my job too. So I love that. I also love that the kids, they see things that we as magicians or as adults don't sometimes,
Yeah.
which is so endearing and really helps me build my magic because they say a little comment or, with the loveliest, "That's not possible." I'm like, well, yes, that's the whole intention of the magic. And
Right.
that's wonderful when you get those kind of reactions out of them. Sometimes you get the opposite where they go, "That wasn't magic at all." Or they just completely don't get the trick where they just like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, okay," which happened last week. So it happens occasionally where the magic will actually go over their head because at certain learning levels where you are in your learning stages, you understand things differently. The trick last week was that the magician and the audience member randomly picked the exact same card. And one
Mhm.
of the kids was like, "Well, yeah, okay, that happened." I'm like, "Well, okay, but that's magic. Like, that's a pretty good
Yeah.
odds." And they just didn't understand that the odds of that happening were extraordinary because they're just like, "Well, yeah, wow, you got lucky. We got lucky."
Mhm.
That challenged me as a magician because I need to explain this better in a way that's going to make it more magical or that really explains what the odds are of this happening and build this up in a certain way when I perform it, especially when I teach it too. So I explain that to the kids too. Like, make sure you do this and that so it really looks magical to them or that we're trying to enhance that entertainment value to them, to the words that we say or whatever. Kids can definitely spot things that we as adults don't, or sometimes the other way around. The kids tell you, "Hey, this is not magic. This is just kind of stupid." And so, yeah, happens. It happens both ways. It makes my performance better. It also makes my teaching better because then I can tell them,
Yeah.
let's do this differently, or how can we? And that's actually what we do a lot in classes. We work together. Is I'm saying, how can we do this together? What do you guys think can make this more magical? What can we make to make this as I always say, give it more of the ta-da moment in the magic. And the kids love to build on that. Some of them are really great about telling stories and making it more advanced that way. So kids get that kind of energy, which is really fun. And magicians don't all the time. When I sit with other professional magicians, forget it. They're too magical. They're thinking like magicians too much. But we got to step back sometimes and think like how audience members actually think, not how magicians think.
Yeah. So in that, I see so many different elements that people may not know go into teaching magic to others. There's a performance aspect. There's also a theater to it. You know, you have to get the audience kind of excited about it. And if it naturally doesn't connect, just how rare these odds are, they could miss the magic. Like magic is partially up to perception that it is magic. I never thought about that.
Yes.
And so that has to be taught to the children or whoever is the young magician, but then also to become proficient, they have to be able to foster that excitement and the perception of the magic trick being special within the audience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So on the first day of a program, a kid walks into this new experience. They may not have done any magic trick before in their lives. What do they experience in your program, and what is your hope for at the end of your program? What do you hope that participants walk away with?
I'll answer the last question first, because I always want the kids to walk away with just an appreciation of theater arts, performing arts, and magical arts in general. So often nowadays, kids don't get to go see live performances, and they just don't get out to see them. So I want to make sure that they understand that magic is an art form. And as you said, it's theatrical, it's performing, there's other things as audience members that they need to do to be polite. And it's a challenge sometimes for them. So hopefully they get that. It would be great if they all went on to practice magic forever and become professional magicians. I know the odds of that are very, 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 very slim. But to have in them a confidence that they can perform, that's one of the biggest things that I often get is the kids. The first day of class, we tell them that you're going to perform for your friends and family at the end of the class. And you just see their faces go, of so many of them getting scared that they didn't realize that's going to happen in the end. But by the end, they're fine. They're ready. They've practiced in class so many times. And as I even talk to them, sometimes having a trick in your hand or doing something that's a trick builds that extra piece of confidence that, just doing a public speech would be scary to death. But, to do a card trick, that's not hard. I just need to do these 4 steps and then it's done and they'll applaud and I'll be the hero. That's a whole lot easier for them. Every once in a while, I'll get a student at the end who is just petrified and will not go on stage. And so what I usually have them do is they'll just do my MC job. They'll introduce the next performer. And that's easy enough for them because they can just say who their friend is. And, here's Alex or here's, Madison or whatever their names are. So they can just do that little bit and that breaks the ground for them. And then usually what happens at the end of the class, they'll go, I want to perform next time. I'm like, okay. Course, because you can do this. I know you can. And so we always try to make sure that there's enough magic in there that some of it is very complicated, very hard to do. Some of it is just what we call self-working, where you just need to be there as a human being and everything does itself. And so that's why I try to, I always think the kids are going to do the self-working stuff, but they usually don't. They usually go for the most complicated, which is great. And they do it well because they get that in their brain. They're like, the one where I just have to push the button, that's easy. I'm not going to perform that. So we always start out with classes. I do have to make sure I explain to them what magic is, because there are some kids who still think it's, Harry Potter. They're going to be doing actual real spells and actually doing real things. And I have to explain to them, no, our job as a magician, we are tricksters. We are professional fakes. That's what we do. We do illusion. We make it look like it. And so that's always part of it. And then the second step is I tell them the rules. As a professional magician, my rules that I've agreed to. I'm a member of the Magic Castle, the Academy of Magical Arts, and my little Magic Castle pin. The requirement is that we can't tell non-magicians how to do magic. I can't tell you. So, which always says, I can't teach the class. And they always get to laugh. Like, I can't teach you guys. I can't teach non-magicians. So the first thing I have to do is make them magicians by learning the oath of a magician. And so they all read the oath, we put it together. We become magicians by learning all the rules and guidelines of how we become magicians. And then I always joke, I say, well, class is done. You guys are magicians. I'm finished. And, I stand up and walk out. They always laugh because they haven't learned any tricks yet. All they've learned is the oath. So that's always our backgrounds. We talk about that a lot, is reasons of why magic has secrecy to it in the trick And I always want to explain to them, it's not about that we want to keep secret, is that we don't want to destroy the imaginations of our audiences. So if we tell them how we do it, it bursts that bubble of imagination. And all of a sudden they go, oh, well, you had a trap door or whatever. That's not really magic. That's doing it. And you don't want to do that. And I always talk to them about, you don't want to burst their bubble without their consent. You want them to say, yes, please tell me how to do this, or else you just destroyed their whole concept of illusion. But we also talk about in class that magic isn't just about the secrets. Just like with motion pictures, we know how they make movies, but we can still enjoy the spaceships flying through space, even though we know it's probably not really a spaceship in outer space. We know it's probably some sort of special effect, but we still have that ability to enjoy it. And the same thing goes with magic. As long as it's an entertaining act, even if I know how you're doing it, if you're really, really entertaining, it doesn't matter if I know how you're doing it, because it's still really entertaining. And that is our ultimate goal as magicians. So that's what we talk about. That's how we start in class. It's some very deep concepts to get sometimes, and it takes them a little while. Others, they get it right off the top. Day one, they're all into it. They're telling stories. They're building characters. They're involving their audience with the interactive magic. Again, it's so depending on what each kid does, as far as what they're building. And I say kid, but also for adults too.
There's so much that goes into that, like, first day conversation, is so much has to be understood, like, right from the beginning. Even like that trick you mentioned earlier. I love that trick, but I don't know it. I don't know how to do it, but I've like seen it in movies. I've seen people do it in real life. People have done it with me. It's, was this your card? And there will be like a level 2 or level 3 to that where they do something else again. It's amazing. And I don't want to know how it's done, because to me, it is magic. It's not this procedural thing. Lots of times with kids, they are just so transparent and honest that they might not get that you're taking away that joy from someone if they don't ask how it's done and you're just telling everybody.
Yeah. That's so hard for them because exactly you said, they want to tell. Having a secret is something they want to spread out, which is fine. And that's great. When I tell them, well, here in the classroom or when you're with your other fellow magicians, go for it. Tell each other, because we're all magicians together. That's what this is for. So if you learn a trick on your own and you want to show each other, do it here. Don't do it on the playground, because you're going to, ruin all of their ideas. If the kids on the playground want to learn, invite them into class, and we can teach in here in an environment where we understand why you don't go and tell how the tricks are done. But of course, what happens, and we learn this really quickly, often when you're learning a trick and you have to perform it for someone, you do sometimes give away the secret when you're learning, not intentionally, but just because you're learning and you don't know that, they can see the trap door. And then you have to learn how to hide the trap door. So that happens. And the kids always say, but my parents figured it out. I'm like, that's okay. That happens. But were you entertaining? Were you fun? Because we want to make it way more than just about knowing or not knowing how it's done. Because again, I always tell them this, nowadays with the internet, you can figure out any trick. You really can. You can type in Google, a few keywords, and you'll get, 100 videos on how to do it. So it's not really the secrets anymore that we need to hide and guard like we did 200 or 300 years ago, because it's out there. What happens, which actually is fascinating, is that as I start to teach them some of the tricks, knowing how it's done doesn't certainly mean you can do it. Because as I always tell the story, is that I know how to paint. I absolutely know how to put paint onto a brush and put it on a wall, but I am not Picasso. I cannot do that kind of art. I just don't have the skill, the time, the knowledge. Same thing goes with magic. Just because you know that there's a trap door doesn't mean you can do the trick. And the kids learn that one really quickly, because a lot of the concepts are just simple. They're just like, you had an extra a coin. Oh, you had a duplicate coin. Okay, now you do it. And they'll be like, I have no idea how you did it. I'm like, well, yeah, you do. You know exactly how I did it, but you just don't know the hand movements. You don't know the motions. And a lot of that, again, it's just practice. So you just got to get in there and do it over and over and over, which the kids always admit that they don't practice, which is always a challenge. So I have to put structured class time, like, all right, for the next 15 minutes, we're just going to do the move over and over and over, because this is probably the only time you're going to perform it. And sometimes it does, that they do slip, they do tell someone, or someone figures it out on their own. My brother figured it out. Okay, that's fine. They know what happened, but can your brother actually do it? Probably not. And again, that's why you can change things where it's not necessarily just about the trick. It's about the story. It's about the character we've created.
So your business is very unique, and I assume that there are benefits to that and also challenges to having a specific type of program that
is not often offered. So, from your perspective, what are the biggest opportunities and challenges that come with offering such a unique program to families in our community?
Well, I think the being unique means it's harder. I don't have a lot of competition. I mean, I've seen a few camps that will teach some magic, but what they're really focusing on is the magic trick. They're going to teach a couple of tricks. They're not teaching how to become a magician. They're teaching you how to do a few little card tricks or coin tricks or rope tricks, which is fine. But what they're going to miss are things like, teaching misdirection or philosophy or theory of how things works or how to make it entertaining. That's a little bit harder. That's one of those things where you need decades of practice and stage time and being in front of audiences to be able to explain it to another magician of here's why we do this and how we do this. So I don't have a lot of competition in that sense. And in the greater Portland area, there's I think only one or two other magicians who even teach regularly anyway. So that makes it easier for me. And usually when I go to a school and tell them I want to do this, they say, we've never had anyone teach magic before. This is great, which is fun, which is great. The other problem though, is that magic is really a niche. There's not a lot of people who want to learn magic. And usually what happens, I find this a lot, as soon as I teach the first time at a new school, I usually get a ton of kids in the program. And then immediately the second and third year, all the kids are like, well, yeah, I know how to do all the magic. Well, they don't know how to do it all, but they know enough to think that they now know, I guess I'm teaching well, but makes it challenge because then I don't get the kids to come back and repeat, except for the few kids who are really, really into it, who really want to become magicians. And I've had a few who've been with me, 5, 6 years, and they continue to come back every single course and they repeat over and over. And because every time I teach, I always teach new tricks. It's always new effects. And so because of that, they can build off of what they've learned, and which is great because now I can just tell them, all right, you guys know the key card method? Yes. Okay. This is the key card method, but we're going to do it with this. We're going to do it with Velveeta cheese slices. And they go, oh, okay, done. That's all I have to do for instruction. And they've got it because they know the move already. They know what we're doing. And now we've applied that same concept to a whole different thing. And they go, mind blown, didn't know we could do card tricks with Velveeta cheese slices, which you can. So why not? Anything that's flat goes together. So that's fun thing as I get more advanced, I get the kids that really know the knowledge of it. One of the bigger challenges as the kids get more advanced is it challenges me to teach them new and more complicated stuff, because I admit I get spoiled when I have the new students who are brand new, because then I can teach them the stuff that I've taught for 20 years. And I don't even need to practice. I can just do it. But then as I'm teaching them more advanced stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I got to go practice. I haven't done this trick for, 10 years. All right, I got to go teach them this one. And so sometimes it pushes me creatively to have to get material for them that's a little bit more advanced, which is actually kind of fun because every once in a while I go, I haven't done this for 10 years. This is really good. I forgot about this one. And so that's great for them because sometimes they love it. Actually, they don't. Sometimes they're like, this isn't that good. I'm like, no, it really was. I liked it. It's just, I learned it 10 years ago. So that's actually a big challenge. The other thing is sometimes I'm competing against programs that are similar, but not. I get a lot of kids that love the STEM stuff. So I'm competing against, you wouldn't think that a magic performance class is competing with a Lego robotics, but the way the two kids are total target audiences for both of us. And so, sometimes those kids who have that analytical mind, they want to do magic, but they also do want to do Lego robotics. And so I've got to juggle schedules I really try to make sure that I don't go on the same day as something that would compete, because I hear it from parents. I hear it all the time from parents that, magic's on the same day as whatever, as the theater class, and my kids want to do theater or magic, so they have to choose. And I would rather make sure that they don't have to choose, that we could do them both, because I want, performing arts. I want to make sure we're together in that way. We go robotics, chess club. Get a lot of kids who are also chess club ones. Again, I think it's all those analytical minds and seeing how they want to think goes into it. So that's always a challenge too, is trying to just juggle schedules and do it from school to school and all those fun things. But that's what I try to do, especially since my program tends to be very small. I've maxed out. I try to max out at 12 students. I don't want to go above that because there is absolutely some one-on-one teaching that needs to be done. I need to have time to work with each kid. And if I got more than 12, there's no way. Every kid has to perform in the class. I want them to perform every day. If you give me 30 kids, There's just no physical way to have enough time. Even at 12, it makes it hard. Because, if a trick takes 5 minutes to perform, that eats up pretty much all of our time. So that means we don't have any time to learn because we're performing. So that is a challenge. That there's been some weeks where I'm like, oh, guys, we ran out of time. You're going to have to perform next week. So really, if I had my way, I would love to do smaller classes, 5 or 6. I've got a few this term that are like 3 and 4. Those are great because then the kids they perform and practice and practice and practice, and they have the time to do it. But the economics of it doesn't always work out because I kind of need to have more kids in there to be able to pay for the class and pay for the rental space and all that kind of stuff. So that's another juggling act too.
Yeah, I understand the juggle well. In your response, there are a couple of gems that I want to highlight. One is knowing your client base. And there are two in our business. There's the buyer, the formal customer, that's like the parent, the guardian, the loved one who purchases that program. But the user, that's the child that's learning, or, if whoever, we're teaching a child, adult, a group, it's whoever is on the receiving end of those services having the experience. And we want to be able to appeal to both and know both very well. So in your response, you talked about kids with analytical minds. Those are the kids that are drawn into your programs specifically. And using that knowledge to schedule effectively as possible, knowing that, okay, the kids that tend to really enjoy my programs, they enjoy these types of programs as well. And so let me look at the calendar, the schedule for each of the partners that I work with, and to make sure that I'm not on the same day as another program so that I don't force a choice. It doesn't have to be either or, it can be both if the schedule allows for it. Does take some more planning earlier and communication earlier. And also on the partner's part, it requires them to know their schedule and to be communicative as well a little bit earlier in advance. But if we are able to plan with those things in mind, and we know that if we have like a soccer business, and we know that the other athletic options are mostly going to be on Thursdays, then let's try to space it out with what day we're offering our programs, because the similar kids or the same kids that are interested in those offers might also be interested in our programs as well. And you mentioned that for the families, the parents that reach out to you, that it can be a challenge for them as they try to balance their calendar. And I think for us in this space, it's good to keep in mind that our biggest competitor is a busy family calendar. Families are overbooked. We are very busy. Our children's schedules, not just for their enrichment needs, but just the modern family schedule. And so the next thing I wanted to get into is I think your story and your success really highlights the importance of creating enthusiasts, people who understand and value your services. And those people can be your biggest champions in the community and naturally spread the presence of your programs throughout the community. One story that we went over and I want highlighted here is typically we think that if our programs do not meet our minimum enrollment, and all of us should have a minimum enrollment, we should know how much money it costs and opportunity that it costs and time and the money that comes with that time to run a program, and correlate that with how many participants have to be enrolled for us to break even, and then also for us to profit enough to sustain our business. So we all have different minimums for our business, and sometimes our programs don't reach minimum enrollment for a multitude of reasons. And this was the first interaction I've had with another enrichment entrepreneur where there was more than two choices. One choice when you don't reach minimum enrollment is cancel the program. And the other one is run it under enrolled and just eat the loss and see it as possibly sowing the seeds for maybe a future successful program at that partner site, or maybe you're just getting experience in, or you have some other reasons that you're still going to want to run that program even if you are losing money. And in your story, you talked about a third option. So can you talk about what has happened in the past? You have had programs that haven't reached minimum and different creative options that have come up.
This was not my idea. This was an idea from from one of my parents, we didn't reach minimum enrollment, and they suggested that maybe they could have it meet at their house. And they offered up their house to have other kids take the bus to their house and meet at their house, which of course saved me the facility fees. So I didn't have to pay for the rental and still allowed me to still engage with those kids. I mean, that was one of the things I always try to do is, especially with magic, is you want to keep them interested. I want to make sure they stay interested. And if I skip a term, I don't know if I'm going to get them back the next term. Like they could have already moved on to something else or whatever their interests are. So I want to make sure they keep them engaged. And so these parents suggested they could use their space. I've also found there are community spaces you can rent. So you can use libraries, sometimes for free. Often there's little creative ways, as long as the parents are fine with the kid, taking the bus home or wherever to another location that they had to pick them up from school. So that doesn't change that much, as well as possibly moving times slightly. And the way that helps me out is that I can actually end up doing 2 schools in a day, because I can do after school at a regular school and then 5 o'clock at somebody's house with a different group of kids. And which is not normally possible. Usually you can't do 2 programs in a day just because all schools let out about the same time-ish. But if we got to wait for the kids to take the bus home and then they go and get their snack, and then I meet with them for magic at 4:30 and the other schools are over by 2:30, all of a sudden I can double up the amount of people I can reach in a day. Even if I'm only teaching the 3 kids or whatever, it's still extra income that I can make right there and still keep those kids engaged. And for me, it's usually for prep work and getting all that done, it doesn't matter. I've already taught that day. I'm just literally reteaching the exact same thing I did an hour before. So it's not a bad thing to do. I've had a lot of communications with a lot of creative parents who've been very smart on ways to do it. I had another one where we combined 2 schools together, where I used the facilities at one school, but the kids came from another school and met them at that school because there was a staggered release time. One had a 3 o'clock release time, one was a 3:30 release time. And that gave enough time for those kids from one school to go to the other. And the school allowed that. Sometimes it depends on your facility, what they allow, because sometimes they don't allow outside people to come in. This one did. They, sure, yeah, use the space, use the classroom, and all of a sudden I had enrollment up to 12 kids. So it was fine. So that is something, think creatively, work with your parents, talk to the families and see. There have been other families where I've tried to do at home and they said, no, we're not interested. They didn't want to do that. I don't know. Sometimes parents are looking more for babysitting. They don't want to have the kids at home. Maybe they work at home or something like that. They just don't want them there until 4 o'clock or 4:30, which is fine. But just then you can be creative and see. Sometimes there's places like dance studios or community rooms or libraries that you can just borrow for free or for low cost. And sometimes it's cheaper. I was using a dance studio that was only charging like $10 an hour to rent their studio space. And that was fairly easy to do because we weren't dancing, but we still do we do still performances. So it still looked like a stage. It was perfect that way. And since we do a little bit of arts and crafts, but we're not a messy class. We're not doing glue and glitter and stuff like that. We can use those kind of spaces. You need to keep that in mind. Obviously, don't use a dance studio if you're going to use glitter all over the place. They won't let you back in.
So I think in that story, we hear a lot of good takeaways. So one, when you offer really high quality services and you have to cancel a program, those who are your biggest supporters in those programs, they may come up with other options, or they may still want that opportunity, even if it might be in a different setting, at a different time, in a different format. So consider reaching out to those who are already registered and enrolled in your program just to see what they're open to and to try to collaborate with them. Not everyone's going to be interested in a different date or time or format, but some will. And either way, I think people appreciate being given an option. So before it's, just we didn't hit this number, it's canceled. People appreciate being considered and being given options so that those who really, really did want that experience, maybe they do want to have the small group hosted in their backyard or in their home. And then also considering different options. If the price to rent a facility at a local library or government facility or private facility or church or school is too expensive, consider other creative options. A dance studio, if you have the types of services that aren't going to mess up their floors or that are aligned with that type of facility. But it's good for us to think outside the box, especially when it comes to the price of facilities, because the further we think outside the box, the more opportunities there are for more affordable and cost-effective rental options.
If you're really creative, I mean, there's a number of for-profit and nonprofit businesses that are out there that are, art spaces that they actually have art spaces where they have an actual studio there that maybe they're not using it at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. And they would rather have it being used. Sometimes, there's so many of them. I'm just thinking like all these different locations, these science and STEM buildings and groups and interactive places. Again, they usually have space. And if you're asking for a partnership with them, maybe they'll give you a deal. Maybe they won't even charge you at all. Maybe you do a trade. I'll teach a Thursday class. If you guys give me Tuesday at 3 o'clock for free, I'll teach an adult class on Tuesday for you. And we'll do a split or something. Be creative in the way you reach out to spaces. It's not easy. I'll give you that. It's so much easier just to say class is canceled, but then you're losing out on that income. You're not engaging the kids. You're not doing your program. I mean, of course, it's also easier just to shut down your business and say, I don't want to do it anymore. But it is hard. There's a lot of juggling. There's a lot of scheduling and moving things around. And then you end up spending more time on the administrative side than on the teaching. But, that comes with the territory. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, and there is a reputational consideration when we're canceling or postponing our programs. Just as a customer, I experienced that this weekend. My daughter started soccer and we were so excited. First, they had to cancel the program. It was being offered through our local Parks and Rec. They emailed the customers, let us know that they didn't reach their minimum enrollment, so that they were going to cancel that one and do a different one. So we waited for that one. Then that one got scheduled. That was awesome. And then I was at the park at 2 p.m. with her in her little jersey on, ready to start, and no one was there. Then I had to call my husband. Turns out then he got an email that it was going to start an hour later. So those earlier false starts for programs, they really colored the perception of your business. This is my first interaction with this business, and it doesn't bode well for building early trust. So we just want to make sure that we are communicating early and often, and that we are consistent. And of course, things happen, schedules have to change, and we know with the type of business that this is, programs are going to have to be canceled. Someone is going to get a flat tire on their way to teaching the class. There's going to be a snow day. We get sick, especially if we're the ones teaching our programs. And if we're not, our instructors get sick. Things happen. We know that there's the option for the schedule to have to change throughout a program. So as much as possible, we want to communicate early and often and be flexible and collaborative in the beginning when our programs are possibly show signs of not hitting our minimum enrollment.
You do start to get a reputation. So if you're canceling programs, I know as a parent, if I see a program canceled, I start to question whether or not that program, there's something wrong with the program. Like, why are they not reaching minimum enrollment? Like, am I making the wrong decision? Should my student not be in that class because there's only 5 people didn't want to sign up? So is it not popular? Is the teacher bad? Is there something I don't know? So that's why I try to be communicative with the parents and tell them what's going on. We're competing with another class or whatever. The ones who know me obviously know. They've been in the program for years. I have a good reputation because I get a lot of siblings that go in. So I'll have the older sibling, they'll graduate out, and then the new one comes in from kindergarten all the way up. I know I have that reputation, but trying to be communicative is important. You've got to communicate with parents and with families as much as possible without inundating them. You don't want too much information because I know everyone's busy, but I still want to make sure I explain to them what's going on. The other option I wanted to mention is that I think I can safely say that if I've canceled a program, which I have occasionally, and I mean like a whole, not just a class, I mean a program for a whole term, I've never gotten those families back. If I cancel, they don't come back the next term. And so I don't want to lose that customer by just leaving them out to dry. So I want to make sure they have a chance to experience it. So that's why if I can run a program, personally, I never do a one-on-one class unless there's another adult present. That's just my own philosophy, which some parents are fine with. They'll be making dinner in the kitchen and I'll be in the family room with the kid or whatever, or in the dining room, or they'll be in the dining room with me doing their own work, which is fine. But I try to make sure as best as I can, I'll do one-on-one. If the kids are really, really interested in it, I'll do a mentoring program with them at their house. And so I try as best I can to try to make sure a program is going to exist. If I got interest, I want to grab them. I want to make sure that they get a chance to see magic, because some of them will become really interested and they'll want to then join a group class. Sometimes there's kids who are just scared of joining a group class and they'd rather do one-on-one because, it's intimidating to be with other people you don't know necessarily. As adults, we don't like that. So why would the kid want to do that too? Especially when they're learning something they don't have any clue how to do. It's brand new. It's not like they have any background knowledge. That's just another thought to think about it if you want to do one-on-one mentoring too. It could be another option too.
If someone is listening right now who has a passion or a specialty, something that they know very deeply, and they're wondering whether there's a business somewhere in that, what do you want them to take away from your story?
You could try maybe just doing little samplers, maybe not a formal program at a school, but put some posters around, see if you can do some online social media outreach to see if you can do some one-on-one classes. I think being a teacher is different than being a hobbyist, or being someone, you love your art craft, you love your art. I've seen so many, even magicians who are really good at doing magic. They're horrible teachers. There is an art form to doing teach. You can't just throw anybody in a classroom and say, teach. I learned that from my parents and from my wife and from all the people I know that are teachers. There are good teachers and there are bad teachers. And so just because you have the curriculum down and you have a script for them to read doesn't mean that they're going to engage with the kids. It doesn't mean that they're going to listen to their students back. Doesn't mean they're going to be really good at explaining things. So keep that in mind. But if they find themselves being really good at something, one of the things that also got me into it is by doing a lecture circuit. I do a lot of lectures of magic, which is teaching, but to a group of 300. And so I'm not necessarily teaching skills. I'm teaching much bigger philosophy things. And I found by doing a lot of those lecturing that I'm very good at explaining things in a way that people are able to take away the knowledge and information from. So I'm invited back to conferences to lecture over and over again about magic history or magic philosophy or theory. I realize I've got a good, decent skill set that I can be able to explain that to them better. The hard part, of course, is the business side, turning it into a business. And I am not an expert at that in any way. I've stumbled kind of along to make things work. And I know that there's a bunch of software and apps and things that claim to be able to help you become more of the business side. But there's a learning curve with all of those things. And I've played with some of them occasionally. I don't know if those are the solution. I think some of those could be a distraction more than a solution, where you can end up spending hundreds of hours learning how to use this online program of how to build your business structure and how to build your after school program. But if you're a horrible teacher, it's not going to make a difference. Or if you have no curriculum or no charisma for teaching kids, or you have no classroom management skills, you can have as many apps in the world as you want. It's still not going to be a great program. It's going to be chaos. And I have openly admit, I have had those occasional classes where it's just the kids are out of control. And that's usually when I go and talk to my wife or my mom and say, what do you do when you have 12 third graders who are bouncing off the walls? And they give you ideas and things. And there are ways to control classrooms. Some of it is bribery, and that works very well. What I've been doing lately is just going right back to the very first day of class, and we go back over the rules, because the rules of being a magician are respect each other. And I'm like, well, if you're hitting each other on the head, is that respecting them as a magician? The other challenge, I've had this every term, is we have to remind the kids that just because it's after school doesn't mean that the school rules don't still exist. And they always say, no, we don't have to do it. It's not school. The school bell rang. Like, no, we still have to follow all of the school rules. We are in school. This is your school. This is your classroom. You cannot go and dig through the teacher's desk. Just can't. That's school rule. So you got to have that classroom discipline and make sure. The worst case scenario, you have to call the parent to have them pick up the kid in the middle of class. I've never had to do that yet. But my wife told me that, if they keep doing that, just call the parents and have them pick them up, because it's ruining it for all the other kids. And usually you can find out pretty quickly that it's usually one or two that she's get rid of them. All of a sudden, class is great, because they're the ones that bring the weird energy in. Not saying that they're causing all the problems, but they bring their weird energy in, and you can get one or two kids in there, and then all of a sudden the whole class is chaos. So anyway, that's probably something that other teachers have to deal with. But if you're a hobbyist, keep that in mind. You will be dealing with people. You'll have to interact with other people. That's a challenge, I know, for a lot of artists, because they're like, magicians, we're kind of solo artists. We're by ourselves. We have audiences, but I'm not working with other people on stage necessarily. But you're working with a classroom of, a dozen plus kids in there, or adults for that matter, and you need to keep them engaged in some way. Those things, though, they don't teach you that in apps. That's what college degrees for early childhood education teach.
I hear the need for support, mentorship, especially if we are coming to this work without that teaching background like your wife has. So you have that in-house expertise that you can quickly get that support from. And for those of us most do not have that, we're building a resource for that. So you can learn more about what we're developing at enrichmententrepreneur.com/support. And we also have classroom and group management tips and resources for free on the website, enrichmententrepreneur.com/resources, because we know that most of us, and their class management, behavior management, engagement, there's always something to learn, and we're all works in progress, and each group has a different dynamic. So as much support as we can get in that area, the programs do better, the kids have more fun, they have higher rates of engagement, instructors stay for longer. If we are teaching the programs ourselves, we're able to persist, because really tough engagement, behavior management can really weigh down on everyone. So we want to make sure that we get that right as quickly as possible. And to do that, we do need mentorship and we do need support. So enrichmententrepreneur.com, we got you there.
I always ask the parents, I always make sure when they register, I find out what class they're in, who's their main classroom teacher. And I do communicate with the teachers throughout the year. Usually it's more just scheduling things. But if you've got an issue with the discipline problem, you could reach out to their teacher and say, hey, after school, this person is having problems. Anything that you're working, does this exist during class? I'm sure it does. It probably is throughout the day. So they may have structures already in place, reward systems, discipline systems or things like that. I know the teachers in the school, they got a ton they're dealing with, but they might be able to say, hey, have you tried, this really works really well with them. Putting them at the front of the classroom has been a joy for us. Like, oh, perfect. We'll have them sit right in front of me. You're going to be my assistant or whatever for the whole class. And all of a sudden that problem goes away. So that could be another, opportunity there's obviously professional teachers who deal with these students every day who might be willing to just drop you a little bit of help if you do it a nice way.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to make it a burden for them, but they may just say, oh yeah, that's normal. He's like that, or here's what we do in our class to manage it.
Yeah, that's a good tip. So Professor Dr. Schreiber, we have reached the end of our time together. So if people want to learn more, where can they find you, book a class, or follow what you're building?
I have a website at historicalconjurer.com. That's Conjurer, Conjurer. You can look me up there. I'm also on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. My website has all the education stuff on there where you can book classes and also see my performances as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Professor DR Schreiber. We learned so much about the business of magic and all that it takes to create that wonderful experience for kids and people in our community. The website will be in our show notes, so you can go to the Historical Conjurer website to learn more. And yeah, this was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
And that's a wrap. Know someone who needs to hear this episode? Share it, because
Sharing is caring.
if this episode earned it, give us all the stars in a review on whatever platform you're listening on, because it helps other enrichment entrepreneurs find this show. Got a question or a story worth telling? Head to enrichmententrepreneur.com. You can submit your questions, apply to be a guest, and access resources to help you launch and grow your business. Again, that's enrichmententrepreneur.com.
Until next time, keep learning, keep building.